For the past 5 years or so, I've had this image on my whiteboard in my gym. It's a 5-part Venn diagram with the individual circles labeled tension, position, commitment, effort, and precision. And in the center, where all of these circles overlap, is the word mastery, with a big question mark after it. What I was doing was searching for the principles of climbing movement. What are the very base levels of the moves that we do? Can we break it down into actual principles? And while it isn't exactly this graphic, I think we can, and I think I have the answer. Let's get into it.
It's time to build.
And I started down this road because in a session with my friend Peter Bonamici years ago, I watched him easily do a move that I just didn't quite understand. I knew that I was physically strong enough, but I couldn't make it work. And it wasn't a complicated move. It just exploited a hole in my understanding of movement that I didn't realize I had. And after making up several variations of that move instead of just practicing that one move how we would in a performance scenario, I began to realize that as long as I kept some of the elements, I could create nearly infinite variations of the move that all felt nearly equally difficult for me. I kept digging deeper and deeper until I finally hit something solid, a possible foundation that took the form of position, tension, and effort. And so I kept digging for more, experimenting with moves that I'm good at to try and understand what's at the root of those moves. And after going down that path, I just can't be happy with the idea that the foundational principles of climbing movement are a set of thousands of different techniques that we have to memorize, because in reality, each one of those techniques arose as a solution to some movement puzzle, long before we gave that solution a name. And if you watch World Cups or the Paris Olympics coming up, it's not hard to see that this is still happening. New techniques are constantly being invented. And so does that mean we're still expanding the foundation of climbing movement? No, of course not. There are themes that run through all of these moves. But I realized because of this that to make it work, I had to draw division between technique and skill. And this is something that motor learning researchers are already doing, because even though we use the words interchangeably, they just aren't the same thing. So, technique is the move or moves that we choose, usually things we already have names for, but not always, in order to solve whatever movement puzzle is in front of us. The technique we choose is usually dictated by the orientation of and distance between the grips, as well as our action capacity, how strong and mobile we are. And we employ that specific technique, then choose another for the next move, and so on. Skill, on the other hand, is the ability to adapt those techniques to a variety of situations, using the principles of the movement as a guide. Now let's use heel hooking as an example here. Not all heel hooks are created equal, and just because you know what a heel hook is and basically how it looks does not mean that you're skillful with a heel hook. Within this one technique, heel hooks, there are infinite possibilities of how to place it, position it, use it to move or to lock you in place, and so on and so on. And being able to recognize and then adapt to those various uses requires skill. And to be skillful, we have to understand the principles of the movement itself. You'll hear some people say something like, heel hooks should always have a pointed toe, or your legs should be externally rotated, or some other air quotes rule. Now, first off, these aren't actually rules. They certainly aren't principles. These are just methods of adapting the technique to some specific situation. If you're skillful, you'll understand when to employ these adaptations to the technique, not because you've tried and memorized every possible variation. You haven't, I assure you, but because you'll understand the foundational elements that go into making the heel hook work in any given scenario. This is why good climbers can find microbeta on the fly that it takes you weeks to find. It's why Janja Garnbret or Tomoe Narasaki can walk out to a World Cup boulder and figure out how to do a move they've never seen that the setter just made up a few days earlier. Now, we might be mystified at their understanding of their bodies and how they fit into the spaces between holds, and there's no denying that they're some of the best in the world at doing that. But it's not magic, and it's not because they somehow already have these techniques programmed into their head. Their coach didn't anticipate this new move that the setters would invent for the next comp and build them a simulator. No, it's because they're skillful. They understand how to use global, thematic principles in combination to make any movement solution work, even the solutions they're inventing right there on the spot. The thing is, we can do that too. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't learn all of the existing techniques. I want them all. I love the names. I love making up my own names for things I've not seen or heard of before. And during performance, we'll always very quickly go to the individual techniques because it's how we communicate. And we'll dial in the details of those individual techniques. However, when it comes to learning, I do think it's a mistake to dive headfirst into a specific technique either too early or too often. Now, I think we can look at this in a similar way as we do a grade pyramid. Sure, it might seem faster to get to that next grade if you just spend a bunch of time projecting that next grade. But time and time again, we see that using this method results in the next of the grade taking just as long, multiple seasons oftentimes, and then the next again, whereas the person who spent an equal amount of time shoring up the level they were on, instead of jumping forward to that next grade, can suddenly do multiple of this harder grade in short order and leap past the person who tried to take that shortcut. This is no different. Yes, it's certainly faster to send the thing you're working on now if you just dial in all of the microbeta and build a replica to train on and dedicate your time to those specific moves. And that can be really valuable at the highest level. But you're going to have to do the same thing on the next project and the next, and it's going to eat up entire seasons. Instead, if you're not Will Bosey or Janja Garnbret or Adam Ondra or Alex Megos, we can dig a little deeper and find the foundational skills that we need to work on. This allows us to better understand what's required of us during a move, to work out the microbeta more efficiently when you do find a project that's hard for you, and to send more things faster. And in saying this, like much of climbing training and tactics, we're making a distinction between practice and performance. During performance, absolutely spend time working out all of the subtleties and the microbeta. But until you're one of those high-level climbers, you'll be better served spending your practice time building more robust, more adaptable foundational skills, gaining a broad understanding of movement that will result in just needing a few tweaks to render a specific movement solution successful. So, of course, the big question is, how? Is it even possible to look at all of these individual techniques and break them down to their foundational principles? Well, for a long time, people have seemingly tried, but they get stuck at things like lead with your hips, or improve your footwork, or drive through your legs, or pay attention to center lines, or the extra super lazy, you just need better technique. And I think these ideas are headed in the right direction. but they've all stopped just short of figuring it out. There's still 2 or 3 layers above the foundation. And even if we get down to things like trajectory or precision or balance, we're still not to the root of it. But I believe after several years of trying to figure it out, I've gotten to the root of it. And I call these principles the 5 atomic elements of climbing movement. Now, these 5 elements can be combined in various ways to create every climbing move there is. Every technique depends on them to work, and often when we think we're bad at a technique, we're actually just being challenged by one of these elements. I'd also argue that even when we're dialing in the details of a specific technique in a performance scenario, say how we're pointing a toe or not during a heel hook, we're actually talking about these elements. In this case, how a change in position affects our tension. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's back up a little bit. I was pretty close with that original graphic on my whiteboard, but a few things occurred to me. First, that some of these were inherent to the movement itself, sort of a requirement for us to meet in order to do a given move the best way for us. And some of these are what we bring to the table, and they play a more regulatory role in the movement. And second, that precision, if you're listening close, I've already alluded to this, is actually a product of other elements, namely position and tension, and then it's regulated by effort and commitment. But there was still something missing, an important piece inherent to the movement itself, something that, when added to the other elements, could account for things like pace and trajectory and arousal levels, and even that precision that we've already deleted. And that thing is rhythm. So the 3 inherent elements, inherent to the moves themselves, are tension, position, and rhythm. And the 2 regulatory elements that we bring to the table are commitment and effort. Now let's go back to the heel hook example that I started with, and let me repeat myself. When we're considering how to use a specific heel hook, and we discover that pointing a toe or not is what makes the move work, we're actually discovering how a change in our position affects our tension. These details, this microbeta, is just the manifestation of an understanding of the inherent elements, whether we know it or not, whether that's the language we use or not. And now, I said these things occurred to me like it was some instantaneous light bulb moment, but in reality, it took a long time. Besides the years of experimenting and exploring in my own climbing in the gym, I went through several months on this podcast talking with experts like Udo Neumann, Taylor Reed, motor learning researcher Rob Gray, reading dozens of books and studies, and repeatedly asking my co-host Nate Drolet to poke holes in my theories. And you can hear those episodes if you're a patron of the podcast. And doing all of this led to several revelations. And once I felt good about all of the ideas and the theories, I turned it into a course that includes a way to evaluate your own movement using this system. I opened it up to 50 people, and then I asked those people to join me on a Zoom call and tell me all the things they thought could be improved. And we made those improvements. We remade several videos. We reworked the evaluation. I filmed examples of the movement situations to give more context. And I'm not going to say that what I've landed on right now is in its final form, but I can confidently say that it's really damn good, and I'm proud of it. And personally, I think this system, this course, and this evaluation tool are game-changing. I don't think there's anything anywhere, even remotely close, to as valuable to your movement as a climber. And it's out, and it's available right now at the link in your show notes, so check it out. But first, I want to give you a taste of how the evaluation works, because even after making it, I was a little surprised and maybe a little resistant to its accuracy. So the evaluation is a series of statements that you give yourself a frequency score on based on how often the statement is true in your climbing. And because movement changes when you're on different types of terrain or when you have a different goal, you can make this as specific as you want it to be. For instance, when I took this evaluation, I was looking at my first or second attempt on a mini to medium length sport project. But you could do it for on-sites or long-term projects or indoors versus outdoors or anything you want. The more general your results will be, the more specific your scenario, the more specific your results will be. Anyway, once you've scored yourself in this evaluation and you've totaled up each section, you then fill in a polar chart that gives you a great visual of your scores for each element. Now, mine said commitment was by far my weakest area. And that threw me a little bit because I wrote a book about commitment. It's something I pride myself on. It's been a strength of mine for a long time. So at first I thought, can this really be right? And I accepted it with some reluctance. I haven't been working on my commitment. I've been working on these other things. So maybe they've just gotten really good. And my commitment is still at a high level. It's just showing up lower because I haven't been working on it. But then I started editing the videos for the drills in the course. And there it was, over and over. I was falling off due to not committing. I was tapping a hold instead of latching it repeatedly. I was pulling my fingers out of a pocket that I was clearly already in because I hadn't committed to the tension required. I was half-assing moves that I've done so many times because in that moment, they just didn't feel right. Air quotes. To be honest, these were things I didn't really want people to see. So what I did is I made a video pointing them out. That's in the course as well. But the thing is, commitment comes in a lot of forms. It's getting on the project. It's trying new beta. It's making goals and actually chasing them. Those things I'm good at. That's what I wrote The Hard Truth about. But it also shows up as committing to latching a hold on the first try instead of attempting it and tapping the hold 4 or 5 times first to test the distance and the tension and the trajectory before you finally latch it. It shows up as being willing to give the effort required to fight for the send, even when you aren't sure if you have the right beta just yet. It shows up as continuing to climb when your movement quality's breaking down for whatever reason instead of dropping off when things aren't perfect. And according to this evaluation, and to the videos that I saw, I could use some work on those things. And I'm not training in the gym right now. I'm not doing drills. So instead, I'm applying this lesson outside. Many of you know I'm trying to send 100 513s before I turn 50 in October. And by reminding myself on those first couple of goes on a new project that I just need to commit. Anytime I want to reach for the stick clip, I just say, okay, maybe you should commit. Anytime I want to find an alternative around a hard, powerful move, maybe I just need to commit. By doing those things, I've already started speeding up my process. I did 513 number 93 in 4 tries. And on that 4th try, I had it so dialed that I did a second lap with no rest. And I have number 94 queued up for a potential second go send. And if you're someone who's spending a lot of your time in the gym or you're in a training block, we aren't leaving you to guess about what to do with your results. I've created a drill matrix that at a glance can show you which drills are most appropriate for the elements that you need to work on. And it covers 25 different drills, all built under the umbrella of the constraints-led approach that I've been studying the past few years, each with a new video, description, and explanation of how to fit them into your sessions. And of course, once you're in there inside the course, you'll get free updates forever. So as we come up with and add new drills or new ideas or an updated evaluation, it's all yours. Not to mention, you can reassess your movement skills over time, whether it's when you're switching disciplines because we know that we move differently bouldering than we do sport climbing, or it's after a training cycle, or just to see how you move now versus how you used to move. Now, this course, this system, this evaluation tool, it's not a magic pill. You aren't going to become a better climber just by enrolling. And that's the other part of that original graphic that I got wrong. The overlapping center of that Venn diagram isn't necessarily mastery. There's a lot more to mastery than this system can encompass. But improving movement skills and technique is by far the most abstract part of becoming a better climber. We don't have a great language to talk about it. There's no system to improve it. And arguably, it's the most important part of climbing. Now, this course and this evaluation tool are, in my opinion, the best way to remove the guesswork and find a clear direction forward. And that finding that clear direction is going to save you time and energy. Ultimately, it's going to make you a better climber faster. Now, the links are right there in your show notes. And if you want to watch that video from inside the course that shows all of these examples of me not committing, that link is right there in the show notes as well. And to everyone who has listened to these movement-focused episodes the past several months, to the people who are subscribed to The Current and have been hearing or have been reading my thoughts and ramblings and ideas and my backpedaling and my new ideas, and have sent me emails with ideas and with encouragement. Thank you. This whole process of thinking about this, of bringing it to fruition, was a real group effort, and I appreciate all of the input I got. So I hope you check it out. I hope you find it as valuable as I already do. And please tell your friends about it. PowerCompanyClimbing.com/academy. You'll find it in there, or you can click the link right there in your show notes. Learn, grow, excel.
This time